last time we saw the Incredible Hulk, he decided to transfer to Michigan State, where he became the leader of one of the greatest college defenses of all time. The Incredible Hulk, with the help of one of his friends, Thor Odinson, well, they had just eviscerated their opponents all season long. And by the end of it, the Hulk would earn himself his second Chuck Bednarik, Bronco Nagurski, and Lombardi Award, all while leading his team to the college football playoffs, where against the Alabama Crimson Tide, they actually ran into Ultron, where it looked like Michigan State was going to be able to take care of business at first. But then Ultron would lock in, and ultimately he would put an end to the Incredible Hulk's sophomore season. Which brings us to today, where the Hulk is trying to figure out what to do for his junior season, but it turns out there was not going to be one. Because one day the Hulk would wake up to find out that the NCAA sent him a letter letting him know that he will not be allowed to play college anymore. They feel like this man might actually hurt somebody. So they let Hulk know that he will now be eligible for the NFL draft, and soon it was all over the news that the Hulk was the first player ever that would be allowed to leave for the NFL early. So now, the Hulk knew that it was time to take his talents to the next level. And now that the Incredible Hulk is here ready to enter his name into the draft, he has to get ready for this NFL Combine where it looks like he was dominating. He came out here and put up 22 reps on the bench and proved that he was easily the strongest player in the draft. On top of that, the Hulk was out here moving so fluid that there were a lot of teams thinking about drafting him at running back. Either way, the Hulk had an incredible draft combine, and soon it would be time to see exactly where he would land when it came for the NFL draft. And it turned out that the Hulk would not have to wait long before getting a call from the Green Bay Packers, who let him know that they were ready to take him with the second overall pick because they believe that the Incredible Hulk will become an incredible difference maker for this team. And now that Bruce Banner is officially a member of the Green Bay Packers, he is more than excited to get to work, as he is already considered to be one of the best players in the league. Because truth be told, the NFL has never seen somebody with this level of strength. He was absolutely destroying his teammates at practice, so the coaches just could not wait to see what he can do in his first NFL action, as the Packers were about to start the preseason off in a game against the Patriots. And ladies and gentlemen, it was only just the first quarter before the Hulk would smack Drake May down to the ground. Oh nah, this man is already looking different. And it turns out that the coaches from both teams had already seen enough. Both teams would end up pulling out their starters because they didn't want the Hulk to get anybody hurt. But regardless, the coaches knew that they had a superstar on their hands. They didn't have him play at all throughout the rest of the season because they wanted him to get ready for some real games. So Bruce was doing a great job preparing for their first game of the year. But he was not going to be the only one, as it turns out that this Packers defense had a ton of top-tier talent. Green Bay was trying to make this defense one of the best in the league. And soon, it was time to see exactly how they would perform as they head into their first game of the year. The Green Bay Packers were heading on the road to hopefully start their season off 1-0, as they were set to face off against the Chicago Bears. Now, it did not take long for the Hulk to realize that the NFL is a much different level. In this league, he was pretty much being doubled or triple teamed on every single play, and all the offense would need is a couple seconds just to make something happen, as Chicago got downfield in the opening drive and scored a touchdown to begin their season. Unfortunately for Chicago though, all this really did was just make the Hulk mad. So that's why on the next drive, he and Micah Parsons would combine for their first sack of the season. They both just sandwiched Caleb Williams to help put an end to one of their drives, but it turns out that this was only just the beginning for Bruce. Because in the second quarter, he would come out here and say shablaka, smacking the dog shit out of DeAndre Swift and forcing him to fumble so that the Packers can recover. The Incredible Hulk was already living up to expectations, and it was only just the first half. It would be the very next drive where the Hulk would come up with his second sack of the day. He was dominating this offensive line at this point, and anytime that he was not double teamed, you could almost guarantee that Caleb Williams was going to be in trouble, as he gets sacked again on a drive where they had a chance to now tie the game up in the fourth quarter, bringing us now to 3rd down and goal with 2 minutes left. And Chicago only has a couple chances left to get to the end zone, but they throw a pick. The Packers come up clutch in the final moments of this game, and it was mostly because of this defense that Green Bay would go on to win their first game of the season. They hold the Bears to 7 points throughout this game to get the win, and everyone on this team knows that they probably would not be able to get it done without the Incredible Hulk, who alongside Micah Parsons had 2.5 sacks with 5 tackles for loss. An incredible performance in his NFL debut, but Bruce is definitely smart enough to know that he cannot get too hyped after one win, because they would come into the next game here against the Detroit Lions where it was obvious that the Hulk could not make every single play. But it didn't mean that every once in a while he couldn't come out here and say "Mwang," as it looked like he might have just gave David Montgomery some CTE. But you know what, he'll be alright, man, this is football. Unfortunately, what would not be alright though is the Packers' chances to win this game. because with the Lions just continuously driving downfield in the last minute, they would eventually find themselves with a chance to kick a game-winning field goal, which they did, giving the Packers their first loss of the year. The Packers would lose this one 6-3 as their offense was not able to do anything throughout this game. To be fair though, it's not like the Hulk was able to do much either, as he only came up with 3 tackles for loss, which is not bad, but it's definitely not up to his standard. He would get a chance to redeem himself though, as he was heading into his next game of the year, with the Packers now heading on the road to face off against the undefeated San Francisco 49ers. Now the Hulk will come out here and fight off this weak-ass double team before sacking Brock Purdy. He is out here putting an end to another stop here against the 49ers, and honestly, that's what this defense was looking like throughout the majority of this game up until the fourth quarter, where on this 3rd down and 6, it seemed like nobody could get off their blocks and Brock Purdy was finding a man downfield for a touchdown. By the fourth quarter though, Green Bay would have the 28-7 lead, and they also had a chance to put this game away with the Hulk saying, "Get off!" But it turns out Micah Parsons would steal the sack, putting an end to this game as the Packers move to 2-1 on the season. They come up with a dominant victory here on the road in San Francisco, led by Micah Parsons and the Incredible Hulk, each coming up with 1.5 sacks each, and they are now looking like one of the best duos on defense throughout the league. At the current moment though, neither one of them leads the league in sacks, so the coaches told them that they'll need both of them to step it up, especially as they head into their next game of the year, which will likely be their toughest game on their schedule. Because the Green Bay Packers, although they'll be at home, they will be facing off against Clark Kent, the best quarterback in the league, alongside the best receiver in the league, Peter Parker. So hey man, the Packers are going to have to be absolutely locked in if they want any chance at coming up with a win against the Giants. Clark Kent takes the field here as he begins his 5th season in the NFL. And the Hulk would realize early on that Clark Kent to Peter Parker connection was something serious, bro, and there was really nothing he could even do. He was trying his best to get to the quarterback, and he was getting the ball out so quick, and all he could do was watch as Ashton Jeanty crossed over the goal line for a touchdown. And that seemed like it was only the beginning for the Giants, as Clark Kent was just dotting up this defense, putting up another touchdown in the second quarter to take the 14-0 lead. It was starting to look real bad here for the Packers in the second half, but the Hulk knew he could not go out like that. So that's why he threw this man right off him and sacked Clark Kent. The Hulk was coming up with a big play to set the tone for this team, as he was hoping that he could spark a comeback, which might actually happen after he sacked Clark Kent again. On 4th down, the Hulk comes up with a play on the Man of Steel, allowing his team to cut their deficit down to 7, and now all this defense has to do is just come up with a stop here on 4th down to give them one more chance, which they do. The Packers have a chance to go downfield and tie this game up to send it into overtime, but they don't. The Packers would lose against the New York Giants, and the Hulk was honestly disappointed with himself because he knew he had to play even better if they wanted to win. Never mind, this man Jordan Love threw 4 interceptions. Yeah, he was cooked from the start. Either way, the Packers were hoping that they can get back on track heading into their next game against the Chargers, but it turned out to be another matchup where, despite the fact that the Hulk and his defense were playing pretty well throughout this game, their offense was letting them down, and eventually they could not hold up, and they would go on to take their 3rd loss of the season. The Packers are now 2-3 on the year, and they know that at some point they're going to have to try and turn their season around. So they're going to try and do exactly that as they're about to face off against the Bruce Wayne-led Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this was a game where, despite the fact that the Hulk was not able to get to the quarterback very often, this defense was playing well. It wouldn't be till the very end of the second quarter where Las Vegas would get down to the goal line and punch it in for a touchdown. It turns out they would not be the only ones punching though, as the Hulk would start destroying this offense. And it wasn't even just him, because Micah Parsons was out here locked in too. These two were just too much for the 5-1 Raiders offense, and down the stretch of the game, they were definitely the reason why this team was now 3-3 on the season. They come up with the win here against one of the best teams in the AFC, and the Incredible Hulk was having himself an incredible performance, going for 4 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks. He was beginning to emerge as one of the best defensive players in the league, as he now led the league in sacks. By far, he had the most tackles for loss. This theme would continue for a few weeks as he and Micah Parsons would just continue to get to the quarterback, and against the Denver Broncos, they would pretty much dominate all day as they came up with a 28-7 victory. This team was starting to look like it was gaining some momentum, which they would definitely need heading into the rest of the season, especially with them having to face off against Barry Allen in the Chiefs. For now though, the Hulk was just focused on taking care of business against the teams he had in front of him, and it was safe to say that he definitely was, as the Packers would continue to come up with wins, and soon they were only a couple games back from the division lead in the NFC North. And I'll tell you guys what, right now, with the way that the Hulk was playing halfway through the season, it was looking more and more likely that they would eventually take the division lead. The Packers were now moving on to 6-3 on the season, winning their 4th straight 14-0 thanks to a dominant performance from the Hulk. He actually went on to earn himself the NFC Defensive Player of the Week, right alongside Clark Kent, who was still dominating the league. At this point in the season though, the Hulk already has 26 tackles for loss and 16 sacks. The man is playing phenomenal so far, but the coaches are starting to think about using him in a different way. They know that the offense has been struggling all season, so they want to see if the Hulk can maybe add a little bit of juice as they head into their next game against the Lions. Now on this opening drive, the Hulk was out here coming up with a sack on Jared Goff to start this game. So everything was going normal as usual until they decided to bring Hulk out at fullback. They wanted to see what he can do if he just ran it up the middle, but he got stuffed. So they just decided to switch it up and get him to the outside, which they did. And the Hulk was out here smashing his way for a first down, and he was picking up some more yards. This man just picked up about 30 yards on one play. Very likely giving multiple players permanent brain damage in the process, but at least he picked up the first down. Eventually, Green Bay was up 10-0, and the Hulk was dominating on both sides of the ball, doing more than enough to help this team come up with a 10-7 victory, getting the job done against their division rivals in a game where the Hulk went for 40 yards rushing, all while putting up 3.5 sacks. He was only about halfway through the season, and he was already encroaching on the NFL sack record, and he was hoping that he can get a little bit closer as he was about to face off against fake-ass Patrick Mahomes in the Seahawks. But first, the coaches needed him to come out here on a 3rd down and inches where he not only picked up the first down, but said, hey, taking some dude's ankles before throwing another dude down to the ground. The Incredible Hulk was a serious problem with the ball in his hands, and on the very next play, he would continue to prove it as he smashed this one dude and broke off a tackle before finding a way to dive in the end zone for a touchdown. His first one of his NFL career. He makes a play that got his team only down by 3, and now it's time for him to make a play on the other side of the ball as he comes up with his first sack of the game. The Hulk takes down fake-ass Patrick Mahomes to help his team get the ball back, and in the 4th quarter, they would bring Hulk back out here on a 1st and goal. But once again, they allowed him to get it to the outside, and he was easily getting across the goal line for a touchdown. The Incredible Hulk had most of his team's points, and on top of that, he was dominating on defense, ultimately helping the Packers move to 8-3 on the year. This team was now on fire, as they have just won 6 in a row, and most of the credit would go to the Hulk, who almost had 100 yards on the day and 2 touchdowns to go along with the tackle for loss and 2 sacks. He now not only had the Packers at the top of the division, but they were looking like they had a chance to earn the 1 seed in the NFC. They just had to come out here and keep steamrolling their opponents like their next one against the Cardinals. And it turned out to be another game where this defense would hold their opponents to around 10 points because the Hulk was just creating too much pressure. The Packers were now 9-3 on the season, and the Incredible Hulk was now getting a ton of attention from the media, because going forward throughout the season, the Hulk would just continue to dominate teams all around the league. He was leading this defense to become by far the #1 defense in the NFL, and after eventually moving the Packers to 11-3, they now had to head into one of the biggest tests of the season, because the Packers were now heading on the road to face off against one of the best teams in the AFC, as they are now about to match up with Patrick Mahomes, Barry Allen, in the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes comes out here to start this game, and it looks like he's about to go crazy. But on one of the very first plays of the game, the Hulk was destroying this offensive line and getting right to Patrick. Barry Allen was trying to block the Hulk, but he had never felt strength like this. He knew that the man he was facing today was different, and he would continue to prove that as Mahomes would get brought down to the ground again. The Incredible Hulk was dominating this game early, and it would even be later on in the 2nd quarter where the Hulk would come up with his 3rd sack of the game. He was demolishing this offense as there wasn't really much they can do. And they were so far behind that they didn't even want to give the ball to Barry Allen, but by the 3rd quarter they knew that they had to, and he would get brought down too. Barry Allen was not able to get anything going against this Hulk-led defensive line. Soon though, he knew that he would have to change that. So a couple plays later, he would actually rush up the middle for about a 15-yard gain, setting his team up with a great opportunity to put up some points. And of course, with a guy like Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, he would eventually find a way to get across the goal line for a score. This game is now 10-7 with the Chiefs having a real good chance to win this game, but the Packers go on to put up a score of their own. Unfortunately, that was already enough to put this game away. The Packers beat the Chiefs 17-7, and this is actually a game where the Hulk went on to score a touchdown. I didn't even see that. On top of that, though, he did go on to also have 3 sacks, having a monstrous performance, and Barry Allen was a little embarrassed by the way that he had played in comparison. At this point, though, this team is now currently the #1 seed in the NFC, and it looks like they might have a real chance at actually earning that spot if they can just close out the regular season. Starting right here as they head into their next game at home against Lamar Jackson in the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this game was actually tied at 7 throughout most of it until Baltimore would kick a field goal to put them up 3. Green Bay now had to find a way to get down the field and come up with a score. So they knew that they might have to bring the Hulk out here to make a play, and he definitely did with this catch. He was helping his team get towards midfield with a minute left, allowing them to ultimately send this game into overtime. Bringing us to a 2nd and 4 where Baltimore was driving downfield to try and take the lead, but the Hulk was coming up with a sack on Lamar. He makes a huge play to derail this drive, allowing the Packers to get the ball back and kick a game-winning field goal to move to 13-3 on the year. The Incredible Hulk was once again coming up big for his team as he not only had 2 sacks, but this performance helped clinch the division for the Packers. They will now officially either be the 1 or 2 seed depending on if they can win this next game, where all they have to do is just take down the Minnesota Vikings, and that's exactly what the Hulk was doing today. He and his defense held them to only 7 points throughout this game, ultimately leading to a big win in the final game of the season. The Packers were able to rattle off 12 straight victories to end the year, officially solidifying their spot as the #1 seed in the NFC, and it's likely they would not be able to get that done without a historical performance from the Incredible Hulk. This man went on to have 42 TFLs and 29.5 sacks, breaking the all-time single-season record in NFL history, and already he is officially solidifying himself as one of the best defensive players of all time. The NFL has never seen somebody like this, but there was a lot of great football being played this year. It turns out that Clark Kent would go on to throw 45 touchdowns to no interceptions. He easily had the best passer rating in the league and the all-time greatest touchdown-interception ratio. He wasn't the only one who played well at quarterback though, as it turns out that Victor Stone was drafted by the Colts, and he was able to have an amazing rookie season. Peter Parker took a little bit of a step back this year, but still was able to go for almost 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. And on defense, there was another guy who was top 10 in tackles as Bruce Wayne continued to prove he was one of the best defensive players in the league. At this point though, the #1 player was definitely the Hulk, and he was really looking forward to continue proving it heading into his first playoff game of his career, with the Packers now about to be at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now it would not be long into this game before the Hulk would say, this man just smacked the shit out of Saquon Barkley, forcing him to fumble on the opening drive, and already this is setting the tone for this team. And despite the fact that Philadelphia would actually start putting up some points here in the second quarter, by the time that it came down to the fourth, Green Bay would have a 2-possession lead. And it seemed like there was nothing the Eagles could do as the Hulk was continuously living in that backfield, and officially doing enough to send the Packers to the next round of the playoffs. They take care of business here 24-14, and the Hulk just continued to prove that he would be able to make plays for his team when they need it most. But he was now looking forward to seeing who he would play next, and it turns out that it would be the Giants, and if the Packers were lucky enough to make the Super Bowl, they would either have to play against Barry Allen and the Chiefs, or Bruce Wayne in the Raiders, which is not exactly ideal considering the fact that Barry Allen just had a game where he scored 6 touchdowns. He had over 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving, while also having 3 touchdowns in both categories. There's a reason why Barry Allen is considered to be the best running back in the league, but for now, the Hulk is just focused on trying to take down their next opponent, which will likely be a tough matchup with the Packers facing off against Clark Kent, Peter Parker, and the New York Giants. Now, unlike the previous game against the Giants, the Hulk was out here taking down Clark Kent early. He was already giving his team some momentum as they stopped them on 3rd down, holding them to a field goal as they move into the second quarter. At this point, the Packers still have no points up on the board, but that might change after this pressure causes a pick. Clark Kent throws his first interception of the season thanks to the Incredible Hulk's pressure, allowing Green Bay to get the ball back and take a 7-3 lead in the second quarter, but now it's beginning to look like Clark Kent and Peter Parker were getting things going. They started to move downfield a little bit at the end of this half, but the Hulk was still making some big plays. He and his defense were doing a great job derailing this drive completely, ultimately giving the Packers a ton of momentum here in the second half as they were now up 17-3. And at this point, the Giants just seemed completely defeated after the Hulk had come up with another sack on the day. Clark Kent had no answers for the Incredible Hulk, and all he can do is just accept his defeat as the Hulk would send the Packers to the Super Bowl. This team was finally heading back to the Super Bowl since Aaron Rodgers did it in 2011. This defense did a great job containing both Clark Kent and Peter Parker in this game, as the Hulk went on to go for 3 sacks in his big performance, as he helped officially take down one of the best teams in the league, a team that actually turned out to have the MVP as their quarterback. Clark Kent wins it again in a landslide, and it turns out that the Hulk was not too far behind. He actually had a chance to win the MVP as a rookie, and only a couple spots behind him was Barry Allen, who's also looking to earn himself an MVP. As far as some other awards, it turns out that Victor Stone would earn Offensive Rookie of the Year, and the Hulk would easily run away with not only Defensive Rookie of the Year, but Defensive Player of the Year. He had one of the greatest seasons in NFL history, but he now has a chance to cap it off with a big win. The Packers are now heading into the Super Bowl, where they're about to face off against one of the best defenses in the league, led by Bruce Wayne and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, this Packers defense was looking a lot different than it had been throughout the season, as they're allowing the opposing quarterback to scramble at the pocket, and it turns out that Anthony Richardson was coming up with some big plays. He had moved this team deep into the red zone, where on this 3rd down and 8 he was scrambling again, and the Hulk was not able to catch him as he got across the goal line for a touchdown to take the 7-0 lead. Things were starting to look bad here for the Packers, as by the end of the 2nd quarter they still had no points, but at least their defense was beginning to lock up. They carried this momentum over into the 2nd half, where on a 4th down, the Raiders tried to run it up the middle but got stuffed. And just like that, it seemed like all the momentum was about to swing to the Packers' side. Because by the 4th quarter, they were only down by 4 points, and they put the Hulk in on offense here to try and make a play, and he definitely was after coming up with the catch. Not only picking up the 1st down, but saying, hey, and moving the team down into scoring range. The Incredible Hulk was moving so crazy that even Bruce Wayne didn't want nothing to do with this, because it would only be a couple plays later where the Hulk would come up with another catch, and he would end up bouncing right off Bruce Wayne's tackle. The Incredible Hulk was coming up with some of the biggest plays of the Packers season, helping them move down to the 11-yard line, where on this 1st and 10 they would get into the end zone for a touchdown. The Packers officially have their first lead of the game here against the Raiders. And now for a chance to win the Super Bowl, all they have to do is just come up with a stop here, which it looks like they might after this incompletion. They come to a 3rd down and 5 where they need somebody to make a play. So when the Raiders try to run a screen pass, it turns out that the Hulk was too fast and gets to Anthony Richardson for a sack. He is coming up with a huge play in one of the biggest moments of the game for his team. It now comes down to this 4th down and 13 where the Raiders would throw a pick. The Packers come up with the interception, and they are taking this one to the end zone for a touchdown. The Green Bay Packers are taking the 2-possession lead with less than a minute left in this game, and it now looks like they have finally done enough to officially win the Super Bowl. The Packers are on top of the NFL world, winning this one 17-7. And unfortunately, all Bruce Wayne can do is watch as he is not able to get himself a ring. On the bright side though, the Incredible Hulk had led his team to victory, and it was largely because of him that this team was now able to call themselves Super Bowl champs. The Incredible Hulk had a solid performance on offense and defense to help his team win the game. He was extremely happy with what he had been able to accomplish this year after dominating in his rookie season. But it turns out that he was not the only one happy, as it looks like Nick Fury was ready to get going on his next big mission, and he only needed a little bit more time before they would finally try and take down Thanos. But this was the Incredible Hulk in Madden 26. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to get this one to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below what else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.